we've had a message in from Craig, the Arsenal fan. Thank you, Craig. He says, we're playing Liverpool on Sunday and I'm just not as hyped as I usually am. May not even watch the game, he says. Still deflated from Wednesday. So close and yet so far again. But going to have a nice football-free summer, he says, with my lovely lady. And then do it all again. I like that, Craig. Arsenal, he says, we'll be back stronger and with the right signings, we will win silverware again.
Well, at least he's optimistic.
Exactly. I like the optimism there, Craig, and the fact that you're going to spend a nice summer with your lady. That's nice to bring her into the picture too. But I'm sure you're not alone, Craig. I'm sure lots of Arsenal fans might be feeling that this morning or this weekend, knowing you're going to have to give a guard of honour as well to Arsenal, perhaps. Let's quickly talk about that Arsenal game where they lost to PSG. And the sort of fallout from that is I've seen a few Arsenal fans saying it's time for Arteta to go.
No?
All
no,
right.
not there.
You're not on that thinking?
No. Well, there's a progression in a club.
Yeah,
You've quite clearly
agree.
seen that. I think it's the optimistic side I'd be for Arsenal is it's so obvious what you need. You need a centre forward, you need a midfielder, whether it's Zubimendi or whether it's a left winger. I think Martinelli needs to be challenged on the left hand side. I think there are three obvious positions where they have to strengthen.
And see, that's where I'd agree with you.
Centre forwards are obvious.
Exactly, and I sort of think if you give Mikel Arteta that centre forward, and if it doesn't then work out, maybe you can say it's time to go. But because he's not had, and look, in all fairness, it could be his choosing to not have signed a centre forward because he is part of the whole transfer strategy now that Edu's left. But I still think, give him the opportunity to have exactly what he wants, if that's possible, with a centre forward, then we'll see.
Look, sometimes it happens that you can't get a centre forward you wanted last season, but you know you can get him this year.
Absolutely.
Okay, that happens a lot in football, where you're not going to get the player you want at this particular time, but he might be available next season. Now, I would say, if you really want to be optimistic with Arsenal, you'd go, this is the perfect time to go big. Liverpool went big with Van Dijk and Alisson in a certain time. A certain period where it made a massive difference to them as a team.
But they did have the Coutinho money to do that.
Yeah, but you still Arsenal got the Champions League money.
No, that's true. I'm not saying that.
I'm sure their revenue would be really good. Arsenal's at the moment because with the stadium and plus what they've achieved, and I'm sure they'll get Champions League football. They've got Southampton and then the last game of the season. I'm sure they'll get the 3 points. They're absolutely guaranteed it. But I would be quite optimistic about it. I think because you know exactly what you need, it's not like you go, well, we might need two there, one there. You might need five. I think Arsenal need three very important, not squad players that you go straight into the team when they're ready and you go from there. I think Mourinho is not centre forward. I watched him against PSG and he's not doing the things that a centre forward who leads a line really well does. He doesn't do that. He can play that role. He can do a job. You don't need people who can do jobs. If you're trying to win the title or trying to win the Champions League, people who do jobs, no. You need people who are good at that job.
Very quickly, before we move on to the teams that have reached finals, what did you make of that game in Paris? Because Arsenal went I thought heavy at the start. I mean, they had a number of chances. Obviously, everyone knows Donnarumma was excellent in goal. Yeah.
I think, you've described exactly how the game panned out. I think for 25 minutes, Arsenal looked really dangerous. I think PSG turned it on and off when they felt they could make a difference. I knew Hakimi would be a problem for them because he's a terrific player. Dangerous team. Paris, because they can lift the tempo really up. Donnarumma, who me included, have said that there's a Rick in there. He's happened to have played 2 or 3 unbelievable games back to back, a bit like Courtois did with Real Madrid when they won it. He had games where he just performed week after week in the Champions League. I thought they were the better team over the two legs, PSG.
Oh, so you didn't agree with what Arteta said?
No, I didn't. No, they weren't. Arsenal had periods in both games. They looked dangerous. I think if the Saka chance, which was a big one, would have gone in late on, it would have made it interesting. I just didn't think Arsenal had done enough.
No. As it was, we will have an all Premier League, Europa League final as Spurs and Manchester United book their places in that on May the 21st. It's in Bilbao. And one of my really close friends, yesterday, I spent ages trying to plot how on earth she's going to get to Bilbao because flights are extortionate directly. And that's even if you can get a flight. So she's going from Brussels to Santander, a train to Bilbao, and a train to here and all sorts. So, yeah, a bit of a journey.
Can you drive? Can you do the drive?
Yeah, you could definitely do a road trip, and there are ferries as well. But the timings of things, it's just making sure everything works out. And because she's going on her own, I don't think she wants to drive. Okay. So I'm sure she could have got mates involved, but she just wanted to get anything booked, so at least she knows she's going to be there. But when you think about the Premier League and how these two clubs have fared, are you surprised they've done as well as they have in Europe?
I think it would have been a bigger surprise if they wouldn't have made sort of quarterfinals, semi-finals in the competition, because if you look at the opposition they beat along the way, there's no traditional really big clubs, is there? You know,
Frankfurt is not easy.
But I know not Bayern Munich. It's not like the Goose and Borussia Dortmund.
I hear you.
From any league, there's not any of them teams in it. So
I know what you're saying.
I would have been surprised if they wouldn't have made the semis, and they've got to the final, and winner takes all.
Yeah,
you know,
interesting. This
football's being diluted everywhere, isn't it? From international football to, you know, we see it in Champions League where we've seen the football being diluted, that it's easier to qualify, and some of the teams that are in the Europa Conference and and the Europa League, Chelsea are found some of the opposition. I don't even know how to say their names of the teams.
Well, you don't have to. I can do the heavy lifting with those. At least I can try.
How do you pronounce the team that Chelsea beat on
Djurgården?
Djurgården. Oh, right, okay.
Well, at least I think that's how you say it. But let's quickly talk about Spurs.
Have you heard of them before?
I have heard of them before, but I think that's because of my days working at Sky and also working behind the scenes. I would have to write out fixtures.
Any player from Djurgården?
No.
Exactly.
No, I wouldn't.
So you'd have been surprised if Chelsea wouldn't have got there. And they've ended up winning, 6-1 over the two legs?
Yeah, 7.
7-1 was it? Okay.
But let's focus on that Europa League final, and in particular on Spurs, because yesterday on White and Jordan, Alex Crook had his say on, if Spurs potentially win the Europa League, what does that mean for their season?
I think the question is fair. I don't necessarily need United in the question to get the answer. The question simply is, will this save Tottenham's season? And obviously Ange Postecoglou there believes it will. I do think the tone between him and Ruben Amorim is slightly different. I think Amorim is honest enough to admit that in the Premier League, United have fallen well below standards, and yes, this will be a nice present for the supporters, but it only really papers over the cracks. Whereas I think you look at Postecoglou there, he's become a lot more bullish in the build-up to this second leg, and it'll continue to do so in the build-up to the final. But it doesn't rescue the fact that Spurs have lost 23 games this season already. They only lost 13 last season. If they finish lower than 16th, it'll be their worst finish since they were relegated in the 1970s. So winning the trophy doesn't right all those wrongs. Yes, it gives Tottenham fans a brilliant moment. He delivers on his promise that he wins a trophy in his second season. Should it be enough for him to keep the job long term? I don't think so.
Interesting take there from Alex Crook. And yes, they've lost 19 in the Premier League, Cass, this season. It's only the bottom 3 that have lost more. Is he right then? If they were to win the Europa League, does that dismiss the Premier League season? Or is he, as you said there, it's papering over some big cracks?
There's a few problems because, we talk about they've lost 19, which is a huge amount. They've only won 11, which is pretty a poor reflection of Tottenham's season. I don't think the Europa League will save him.
No,
I don't, because I think if you're looking at the bigger picture and you go budgets, transfers, who comes in and what's happened before and how they gelled and the amount of injuries you've had, I think the club will be they'll be dissecting everything about their season. This isn't just about losing 19 games in the Premier League. This is about all your performances in the Premier League this season. Is there any evidence that what you've seen in the Premier League bodes well going into next season? Because it's been filled with loads of injuries, naive play, giving away goals for fun, being a soft team to play against. That's how I describe Spurs' season. And when you do see them at their best, they can look really good. I saw them beat West Ham 4-1 at the Tottenham Stadium and thought they were terrific in the second half.
Yeah.
But it's a few crumbs in a very, very poor season. So I'm not convinced at all there. Because the club might say, well, there's a £200 million budget. Does this man get it? That's another question.
It's like the Eric Ten Hag moment, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And how many transfers did work from last season? So a lot of negatives are there.
Yeah. It's interesting, though. The two teams that more was expected from in the Premier League, struggling in the top flight, but are through to that Europa League final. And, of course, Chelsea, likewise, are through to the UEFA Conference League, where they're going to take on Real Betis. Manuel Pellegrini's Real Betis.
As we stand today, it's 15th against 16th in the Premier League in the Europa League final.
And the winner gets Champions League football. It's bizarre. But that's the rule. Them the rules, Cass.
They're the rules, yeah.
So we will not argue with that. Okay, you will be able to listen in, by the way, talking of Chelsea, and I know we didn't really talk too much about them, but they're in Premier League action tomorrow and they head to St James's Park, and we're bringing you it live here on talkSPORT. It's actually a 12 o'clock kickoff, so an early one, this one. It's Reshbin Chowdhury, Sam Matterface and Danny Mills who will be bringing you that one.
On AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.